Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today we're going to talk all about my plans for April. I am so ready for April and full-fledged spring. This has been a rough winter for me in terms of health and wellness and just life and things going on and stuff. So I am ready to kiss winter goodbye and say hello to spring and embrace the beautiful trees and the flowers blooming and the warmer days and spring break, hello, and Easter Sunday, which is my favorite Sunday in the whole entire year, especially at church and being on the music team at church. I look forward to it so much. So I am looking very much forward to April and I have some great reading plans, I think. And so I invite you to join me on some of them. So let's dive in and see what I am planning to do in April in terms of reading. First of all, for my Reading the Classics challenge, the prompt for the book in the month of April is to read a classic memoir. Now, I also would throw in there autobiographies. I feel like that counts as, you know, it's a very similar genre to a memoir. So a classic autobiography works as well. Or even like a classic, like a journal written in the first person, someone's actual journals, as long as it is nonfiction and in the first person, someone telling their own life story and is a classic by the definitions of my challenge published before 1975. It counts for that. And the scavenger hunt, the items are war, or mentions of war, or set during wartime, and a work of art. So either about a work of art or mentioning a work of art. And art can be anything that is art, that is something created by human hands or human minds. It could be visual arts. It could be arts like dance or music or the literary arts or poetry. So mentions of works of art. And also a famous person, which should be really easy because most memoirs are written by famous people very often, or the person becomes famous by virtue of their memoir. For example, like Corrie ten Boom. Well, I don't know like what came first, whether she was well known before or after she wrote her autobiography, The Hiding Place, about her, or memoir, I guess, about her experiences in World War II. I know that, you know, there are many people who have never heard of Corrie ten Boom. So obviously this is a little bit of, you know, a sliding scale. In some circles, she's famous, but I know like there was a movie made from her book. Her book has been a bestseller and that sort of thing. So, you know, some of these, they may not be famous all around the world by everybody, like a household name sort of famous, but if movies have been made about them, if the books that they wrote have been bestsellers, that counts as famous. So that's the scavenger hunt. Before I get into the books that I personally plan to read as a part of this challenge, I wanted to offer up some recommendations of books that I have personally read that fall under this category. And I will let you know if I remember which ones of them fill which scavenger hunt items or not. And then also there are a couple of ones that I want to read, whether in April or at some point, that are on my radar, excellent memoirs or autobiographies that I'm aware of that were written before 1975. So let me get started on my list of recommendations of ones that I own physical copies for. The very first one I have mentioned before on more than one occasion, and that is Cheaper by the Dozen by Frank Gilbreth and Ernestine Gilbreth Carey. This is about a family and they had 12 children and the father was an efficiency expert. And so this is just the story of their family. It's funny, it's humorous, it's occasionally heartwarming. And the dad was a very interesting person and the family was just very interesting. And we read these. I came from a large family also. We read these when I was a preteen teenager. And there were a lot of things that just resonated with us as a fellow large family. There were a lot of running jokes within our family that came from this book. So I have very fond memories of reading this one. And Bells on Their Toes is the sequel, which is interesting as well. I think this one is better personally. Cheaper by the Dozen is better, but Bells on Their Toes is also funny and is also interesting and kind of follows some of the children as they gain adulthood and, you know, just their experiences growing up and taking flight from this crazy family that they belong to. Another one is, and this is just the actual hardcover copy, I don't have the slipcover, but that is Through Gates of Splendor by Elizabeth Elliott. And she wrote several other books also. Shadow of the Almighty, The Savage My Kinsman, and the Passion and Purity. All of those would be memoirs or autobiographies of her and Jim Elliott's story of their growing up years, their marriage, their relationship, their ministry to the Aucott Indians in Ecuador, I believe, and the martyrdom of her husband and some of the other missionaries, and then her continued ministry after that among the Alcott Indians. So this is all of those books. I've not read all of them, but I know this one was very good. I'm pretty sure I read Shadow of the Almighty, which is also very good. So excellent classic memoirs and biographies to read about those amazing people. And then we have Night by Elie Wiesel. And this is just, if you have never read this before, this is a must read. This is profoundly impactful. It's not that long, but that's good because it's very, very heavy. It is difficult to read, but it is important to read. And I highly recommend this one. It is one that was a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize and was definitely deserving of that honor. And then I have Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs, which is just a fascinating and often heartbreaking story of a girl, Harriet, a woman, Harriet, and how she escaped from slavery, but then she was basically in hiding for like 7 years or something like that in a tiny, tiny little attic crawl space in Florida. And before she eventually gained her freedom. So this is her story and definitely worthwhile reading. It's one of the better known slave memoirs that are out there available to read. There's another one that I haven't read yet. Oh my goodness. I can't remember the name of it, but someone else mentioned it the other day. And I am very interested in reading it. I'd heard of it before, and if I remember the name, I will put it in the description box. But there was another memoir of a slave that I really want to read as well. Recently, I read this little book, David Brainer's Personal Testimony, which is an abridgment of a larger book, The Life and Diary, I believe it's called, of David Brainerd. And I'm actually going to be reading that one in April, but more about that in a minute. Either one of those would work for this prompt. And it's fantastic first person retelling of his spiritual hunger, his spiritual journey, as well as his ministry to the Native Americans in the colonial era. And his ministry, which was at first seemed ineffective and pointless, but then God did some mighty things among the people there. And his retelling of that is very stirring and inspiring. In March, we have read Cecilia by Fanny Burney, and fascinating novel. I read this, The Diary of Fanny Burney, some years ago, and I enjoyed it so much. It ranks up there with one of the favorite memoirs that I have read. And it just tells the story of Fanny Burney and the people that she met, which she met a lot of extremely influential people. She lived in the royal household for a while in England. She lived in France during the French Revolution, and she just lived an incredibly amazing, interesting life. She had breast cancer, and she was one of the first women to undergo a mastectomy without anesthesia, by the way. And so, very interesting woman, fascinating life. I highly recommend this memoir or diary. Other memoirs and diaries that I have read that I don't have on hand, I don't have physical copies of, would be All Creatures Great and Small, which is admittedly a fictionalized version of James Herriot, which is not, I don't believe, his real name, his time as a vet in England. But it's still, there's a lot of factual information in there as well. It is based on his life. It's just fictionalized, I think, so that, he could write stories about people and say, well, this is not any real person, but it was based on real people. So it's fictionalized, but I think it's definitely would count in this category. And I apologize, I have neighbors doing work outside, so if you hear their machines, I'm sorry. I forgot one that I do have, that is Hospital Sketches by Louisa May Alcott. This is another one that is somewhat fictionalized. She writes it as if very much like in a story format, but it is her real experiences as a hospital nurse during the Civil War. And it was very, very interestingly told, very short. So this would be a fantastic choice for you. I imagine it's probably readily available online in a digital format, or, you know, this little short book is not that expensive. So anyway, highly recommend this. I read it last year and enjoyed it very much. Another memoir that is really important to read is The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. I read that for school many years ago and it deeply impacted me. It was a very profound retelling of his life and his thoughts, and I want to reread that one as an adult with more perspective. But that one is another one that I would highly recommend. And finally, also The Diary of Anne Frank, which most of us have read, but if you haven't, definitely another important one to read that gives a lot of perspective on World War II from the eyes of a young girl on the brink of womanhood and kind of coming of age during that time, and how her family gets involved in the things that go on the war, and then what happens to her. Definitely a very interesting and profound read. I forgot to mention what, if any, of these things cover as far as a scavenger hunt. So let's go back through them and talk about that for a second, real quick. First of all, this one covers, it hits the war because it takes place during the Civil War. She's working in a hospital during the Civil War, and Louisa May Alcott was definitely a famous person. I do not believe there's any mention of works of art, however. The Diary of Fanny Burney, she is a famous person and she lived through the French Revolution. Now, she moved in literary circles of her day, so there is a lot of mention of works of literary art, including her own, as well as artists and poets. And her father was a musicologist, so there is mention of musical artists as well. So I think that this would have hit all of the items also. David Brainerd's personal testimony. I can't remember if this, if any of like the French and Indian War takes place during this one. I don't think so. And it's prior to the Revolutionary War. It happens to be a couple decades before that point. So yeah, I don't think that there's any actual war in this one, or works of art. And I'm not sure how famous David Brainerd is, so I don't know if that hits any marks or not. Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. This is one of the more famous memoirs written by former slaves, so I am not sure if that counts as famous or not. It does take place during the Civil War, so it counts for that. I don't think there's any mention of works of art, though. Elie Wiesel obviously takes place during World War II, and he has definitely achieved a level of fame. As far as works of art, I don't think so. And through Gates of Splendor, I don't think that there is any war in this one. Jim Elliott and Elizabeth Elliott were pretty famous people in their own right, especially in their day. So there's that, and they're definitely famous in Christian circles. I don't know about works of art. That's the one that's going to be hard. And then in this series, I don't think that there's any mention of war. I think this all takes place, what does this say? Okay, I think the first one happens before World War I, or maybe they're both in between World War I and World War II, somewhere around that time, early 20th century. So maybe World War I makes an appearance in one or two of these books, but I don't know about that. And as far as works of art go, I don't know, but there's a work of art. There's a painting on the cover there of bells on their toes, and they are famous. So especially in their time, they were definitely famous. As far as ones that I want to read, one of my subscribers sent this to me, and I am very excited to read this. This is Pioneer Girl by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and this is, I believe, the one that she wrote first before she wrote her daughter helped her write Little House on the Prairie and Little House in the Big Woods in that whole series. And this is more biographical than the others, more strictly factual. And then this book, this bind up it, or has, or this edition, I should say, has a lot more of biographical information and other things in it. So I really do want to get to this one. I don't know if I will get to it in April, but it's definitely, if I'm in the mood, I will reach for this one. So the book that I am going to read for this prompt is The Life and Diary of David Brainerd, which was edited and compiled by Jonathan Edwards, and who was one of the preachers during the Great Awakening here in the United States. You may have heard of his famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And I really enjoyed reading that abridged version of David Brainer's personal testimony, and I really am looking forward to reading the full-length autobiography or diaries together with Hope from Hopefully Books, and I'm really excited about that buddy read, but I don't have the copy on hand yet. I ordered it from Better World Books, I think, and so it's supposed to be coming, but I don't have it in my hands yet. But I am planning to read that one in April, and I'm really looking forward to that one. And that will be one of my definite reads for the month of April. I have 4 definite reads, and I'll go through them in a minute, but that is definitely one of them. As for items on the scavenger hunt, well, I don't think it means any of them. So I'm failing. But I might tackle another one over the course of the month. We'll see if I can find time to do another one. So far this year, that has not been happening, so I'm not counting on it. But, you know, if it does happen, that's what we're going to do, okay? So the only other thing I want to mention before I get into the rest of my personal TBR for the month of April is the challenge for the month of April, which is to subscribe to a BookTube channel that you do not already subscribe to. And so what I'm going to be doing throughout the month of April is I am going to make a list for myself of a whole bunch of channels, newer, younger, smaller channels. I'm going to make a whole list of them, and then I'm going to randomly choose one of them to highlight in each video that goes live in the month of April. And so if you want, you can subscribe to one of those when I mention them if you haven't already, or you can just find another one. A good way to find a new booktuber is to look for the, I think it's a Hello BookTube tag. It's the first video that one of the first videos that a lot of booktubers do to introduce themselves, and they, you know, a series of questions that they answer. So I always look for that and am able to find some new booktubers that way and some new channels. But also, if someone mentions or tags another channel in their video, someone that I already follow and enjoy their content, I usually go and subscribe to that person that they mentioned, because it's probably going to be someone also that I'm interested in. So that is the challenge for the month of April. Now, digging into the rest of my TBR. So I already mentioned the memoir of David Brainerd. That is my first must read that I will read. And then for the Jane Austen 250th birthday celebration that Charlene and I are hosting, I am so excited because this month is the month that we get to read my favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time, which is Pride and Prejudice. And I'm very excited because I'm going to be reading this annotated version by David M. Shepard. I really enjoyed his annotations in The Sense and Sensibility that I read in February. And I'm so looking forward to those annotations in Pride and Prejudice. And I love this book so much. I practically know this book by heart, but I'm looking forward to reading it again. And my next definite read for the month of April is another buddy read, this time with Charlene at Coffee and a Book. And we are going to be reading A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures by Angela Bell, which I have been wanting to read since it came out last year, and I've heard so many good things about it. I'm very interested in reading it. It's a little bit not my normal sort of book to read, but that's one reason why I'm looking forward to it. So I'm hoping that I enjoy it. And this one does double duty because it also works for Jeanette's Christian Fiction Reading Challenge. The prompt for April is to read a book by a new to you author. Well, the author, Angela Bell, is definitely new to me. I think this may be her debut novel, and I think she has some novellas, I believe, but I've not read any of them. I had thought that I had read something by her, but I think it was by another author whose first name is Angela, and I was confusing her with them. So I have never read anything by Angela Bell, as far as I can tell, and so she'll be a new to me author, and I'm really excited to read this book with Charlene. So that is my third definite read for April. My other definite read, and I don't have the book right here, I think it's in my room, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo. I'm going to be continuing reading that. I already started it in March, and I am on pace with it for the most part, so I am looking forward to continuing reading that. I will not finish it in April, pretty sure, unless I get really into it and want to, which I will. But I mean, if I want to, I will like just read through and finish it, and rather than like trying to stay on a pace per se. But at this point, I am currently happy to just keep reading some pages a day and also be reading other things. So I will continue to do that through the month of April. So I guess you could put that also in my definitely will be reading list. But the final one, I actually need your help with. And this one goes for Chantal's Read Your Shelf Challenge. And the prompt in April is a book with flowers, or just flowers. Flowers is the prompt. So flowers in the title, flowers on the cover, etc. And for some reason, even though Chantal picked like the easiest sort of prompt ever, like just a word, and you can apply it however you want, I have struggled every month with these prompts. Trying to find books on my shelf that fit these prompts. I don't know why. Has anybody else struggled with these? Is it just me? I've struggled, but this time the struggle is that I have quite a few books, not quite a few, 5 or 6, that are on my shelf that I want to read. So that in that sense, they fit the challenge, and they have flowers on the cover or flowers in the name. But I can't decide between them. So I'm going to show you what I have. And I'm a little bit leaning towards one of them, but I kind of would really like to get some input from you guys. If you can tell me if you've read them or what you know of them, which one you would recommend that I put on my definite list for the month of April. And if there's any kind of consensus in the comments, I may even, once this video goes live, I may even put a poll up in the community tab. If there's a consensus, then I will choose that one. So let me show you the possibilities. So I have 5 books here. There may be others, but these are the 5 that I'm going to show you and let you tell me what to read. So the first one has been on my TBR for a while, and that is The Secret Diaries of Charlotte Bronte. And some of you read The Lost Memoirs of Jane Austen in January, and not everybody loved that one. But my understanding is that this one is better. I didn't hate The Lost Memoirs of Jane Austen when I read it. It was fine. It wasn't like my favorite book ever, but it was a fun story. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure I will enjoy this one as well. But a lot of people like this one even better than that one. So there is a little flower right there. And then we have Georgette Hare. I'm always up for Georgette Hare. This is Friday's Child, and if you can see, there are this kind of like a impressionist sort of painting, but there are definitely flowers in the bushes and trees behind this girl, and she has, well, it's a bow in her hair. I don't know if it's a flower in her hair, but Friday's Child by Georgette Hare is also on there. My sister gave me this one, and I do like the idea of reading this month because the cherry blossoms will be peaking probably now as this video goes live in Washington, D.C. So this is a good time to read that one based on the cover alone. It's got cherry blossoms on the cover, and I don't think I said the title. That's The First Ladies by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. So I am interested in reading this. There are actually other books by these authors that I have more of an interest in reading, but this one has the flowers on the cover. So that's why it made it to this short list, and I do want to read it. Then I have Mrs. De Winter, which is, I think it's supposed to be like a sequel or a prequel or whatever to Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And I don't know anything about it besides that. I don't even know if it's good. I know nothing. But it does have some flowers in that drawing, in that painting there. And finally, this one, and I don't know anything about it. It's a pretty cover. The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. And I think this was a pretty popular book when it was first published. Which was, when was this published? 2017. So it's been out for some time now. And I don't really know too much about it. I mean, I've read the blurb on the back, and I've heard people talk about it a little bit, but I don't know anything. So I don't know if it's good or not. I don't know if I would like it. I have no idea. But this is such a pretty cover, and I picked it up used somewhere, and it's been on my TBR for a while, so I really do want to read it. So anyway, this one is also on my short list. So out of those 5, tell me which one I should read. And if there's a consensus, that is the one that I will read in the month of April. So those are my must-reads, and then there are a couple of reading events on BookTube in April that I'm really excited about participating in. The first one I'm going to mention is People April, which is hosted by Roz at Scally Dandelion Around the Books, Elizabeth at Bookhands and Books, and Brian at Bookish Texan. And it's basically similar to my prompt for the month of for the month of April. I'm sorry. Have I said March in this? I may have said March a couple times. April. We're talking about April here. Okay, just in case that wasn't clear. Anyways, People April is a readathon about reading nonfiction about real people. So not necessarily, like my prompt is specifically like a first person autobiographical memoir sort of thing. It doesn't have to be that. It could be letters. It could be journals, memoirs, autobiographies, but also biographies, anything that is factual, nonfiction about a real person. And so the David Brainerd book is definitely going to qualify for that one. And that is a for sure read for me. I may get some others read in there as well. I will mention a couple of the possibilities that I have on my shelf that I might mood read if time allows. And this is a biography of Laura Ingalls Wilder that I picked up when we went to DSMET, South Dakota last year. And I have not read it yet, but I want to. Throwing books. And then I have 3 biographies of Jane Austen. The third one is not in my possession yet, but it is on its way to me. And that is the one by Claire Tomlin, which I really want to read. But I also have this one by Jane Aiken Hodge. And then I have this one by Carol Shields. And both of these, I want to read all the biographies of Jane Austen and pick my favorite. But these are definitely a possibility. And this is The Brontes, A Life in Letters. I've had this book for a year and a half at least, and I have not really cracked it open. I mean, like, I've glimpsed at it. I cracked it open and I've looked at 1 or 2 of the shorter letters, but that's about all I've done. And I really do want to read it. I want to read these letters. I'm very interested. I'm very curious. I just haven't yet. Will I in April? I don't know, but it's definitely on my list of possibilities. And then we have Spring into Movies, which is every year Katie at Paperbacks and Ponytails hosts a spring readathon, but she has kind of like different themes every year. And this year her theme is movies. So she had some, I think, authors and booktubers give her suggestions of their favorite spring movies. And from those, she made prompts. And so that's a lot of fun. Go and check out her challenge. She has a printable little bingo board. And so some of these, my definites fit into these prompts. But then there are also some prompts that I came up with some ideas of additional mood reading for me. So let's run through those real quick. The first one is Singing in the Rain. So a book where they sing or play an instrument. I am still trying to read through the books. Well, I think I've read 2 or 3 maybe that my sister gave me. She gave me a whole stack of Elizabeth Mansfield, which is kind of like vintage Regency romance novels. And I haven't had much luck with the ones that I've read so far. So I'll probably read 1 or 2 more. And if I don't love them, then I will just unhaul the whole lot of them. But this one has a girl playing a violin on the front, and it's called A Prior Engagement. So that one would go for that prompt. And then Bambi is the next one. And for that one, you're supposed to read a book with an animal on the cover, and the copy of David Brainerd, his life and diary that I'm going to read has a horse on the cover. He's riding a horse on it. So that one is going to fit for that prompt. And then Miss Congeniality, the prompt is romantic suspense. That is not something that I read a lot of, but I did start the If I Run series last year, or I think it was last year, and I did not read the 3rd one. So probably if I do anything, it will be that 3rd one, and I will finish up that series if I get time, if I get to it. Then the next movie is Big Fish. And so you're supposed to read a book with 400 plus pages. I am going to be, I think either Pride and Prejudice will fit for that, or The Count of Monte Cristo, which I will be continuing to read, but I won't finish in April more than likely. So I don't know if technically that counts, but whatever. I will be reading a book that's more than 400 pages in the course of the month. You've got Mail. So that would be an epistolary book. And again, the David Brainerd book goes for that because it is his journals and diaries. Easter Parade is the next one, and that is supposed to have a hat on the cover. And I have 2 options for that. One is a David Brainerd book. It does have a hat on the cover, so that covers that prompt. But also, I have this one that I don't know too much about. I've never seen this movie, and I just know it's a popular Austen sort of retelling. And it has a hat on this chair right here. So that is a potential mood read option. And then Secret Garden is the next one. And the idea is to read a flower on the cover. So any of the ones that I pick for Chantel's Read Your Shelf Challenge would go for that. I also have one more option for that, which is A Fall of Marigolds by Susan Meissner. And actually throw this into that mix of those 5 other books I mentioned if you guys think I should read this one instead. That is another option. I don't know why I didn't pull it out before, but that one could go for that as well. And then 7 Brides for 7 Brothers is the final prompt, and the idea is to read a family story. So I think Pride and Prejudice will count for that because it's the story of the Bennet family, and it doesn't tell in detail all of the stories of the family, but it's definitely centered around the Bennet family, so I think it totally qualifies for that. And the final book that I am the readathon that I am participating in is the TBR Clearout Readathon hosted by Books and Things. And this one should be pretty easy to fit most of those books into it, but I have a couple other options that work for it. First of all, the idea is to set a goal for yourself for this readathon. And my goal is basically just that all the books I read in April be books that have been on my TBR already prior to the month of April. And so far, that is the case. That is what I'm working with here. So all of these books that I've mentioned are books that I have been wanting to read already for a long time. I've already been planning to read, and or I already have them in my possession and need to be read. And then the second prompt is to read a book that has been on your TBR for a long time. And a handful of these would qualify for that depending on how you define long. But The Keeper of Lost Things I've definitely had for a long time. So that one would qualify. But quite a few of these would qualify for that as well. Or on your TBR for a short time. And I would say the David Brainerd one qualifies for that because I read the abridged version last year in the fall or in November maybe. And so it's only been on my TBR since then. So that's a pretty short time because my TBR is a pretty long running thing. So that's a fairly recent one. So that goes for that. The longest book on my TBR, definitely The Count of Monte Cristo. And I will be reading from that. And then the shortest book on my TBR. And so this one, I think the best one to go for that is The Epic of Gilgamesh, which is very short. And this book is short, but also half of it is like a preface and introduction. And half of it is the actual story. So it doesn't take very long to read, but also this works for, I want to read some of the books that my son is reading for his ancient literature class, and he read this one. So I want to read that, and it won't take me long. So I should be able to knock that one out at some point during the month. And then another prompt is a book you fear you've lost interest in. I'm going to go with Piranesi by Susanna Clarke because I've been wanting to read this for a long time. I've heard good things and I've heard interesting things. But then when I read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by the same author, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It didn't draw me in. It wasn't super interesting to me. So I gave up on it. So now I don't know. And the more I hear about what this book is like and how the narrative goes, I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy it. So I may have lost interest in this, but I need to give it a go and decide if I'm actually going to read it or if I just need to unhaul it. Such a beautiful book, too. And finally, a book on my TBR that I'm very excited to get to, and that is The Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures that I'm buddy reading with Charlene. I've been wanting to read that since it came out last year, and then someone gifted it to me at Christmas time, I believe. So I have been very excited to get to it since that point. And so Charlene and I will be reading it together, and I am looking forward to that. I think that's everything. Those are my plans for the month of April. So which of these readathons are you participating in? And please tell me which flower related book I should read in the month of April. Help me to make up my mind about that one. And just let me know what you're looking forward to reading in the month of April. And I will chat with you in the comments, and I will see you next time. Bye.